Today I would like to welcome Andró Griessel, CEO and Wealth Manager at Woodland Wealth. Welcome, Andrew, and thank you so much for your time.
Hi, Madeleine. It's nice to chat to you.
Andrew, there's a recent article doing the rounds written by Mr. Magnus Haystack on how to invest for the possibility of a failed state. Now, in this specific article, Mr. Magnus Haystack highlighted a few points, and I'd like to get your input and perspectives on some of the matters that he has shared. Now, firstly, I'd like to hear your thoughts on one of the thought-provoking yet controversial statements that he has made. And this was the fact that he suggested selling residential and listed properties, except for properties in the Western Cape. What exactly are your perspectives on the recommendation that he has made?
Hi, Madeleine. Yeah, thanks. I think, if you'll excuse me, I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to stand still predominantly with residential property, because actually very few people hold commercial property to a large extent. But everybody owns a property. So when you read this, especially if you're living in the northern parts of the country, it's important that you sort of understand if that is good advice or not. So, at Woodland, we very much an evidence-based business. So typically, there's always a narrative, but typically we want to look at the facts and then ask ourselves, but is that the truth? So if you look at this specific piece of advice, I just took a client of mine that lives in somewhere in the northern Transvaal, the old northern Transvaal, or Gauteng these days. And I looked at his house, the value of his house, if he should sell it today and rent it back from whoever he sold it to, because obviously he doesn't necessarily want to immigrate yet, or he wants to stay in his house. But he wants to follow this advice that you need to sell the property, because property valuations are just going to keep going down, as Mr. Haystack suggests. Now, if he did this, he would be able to sell his house for somewhere in the region of 2.75 million rand. Considering what's going on in the market where he is staying, and then he would have to rent that property back roughly in the region for 25,000 rand a month, and then there would be some you could probably deduct the rates and taxes that he's currently paying off that 25,000 rand to get his sort of net exposure. So we would be happy to say his net negative cash flow per month would now be in the region of 22,000 rand a month, but he would have received the 2.75 million rand. Now, if we assume he invested 2.75 million rand at a rate of about 2% above inflation, a net rate of about 2% above inflation, that money that's in that investment account, it has to pay for his rent that escalates every year, would last only 117 months or slightly less than 10 years. So what that would mean for the client is 10 years from now, the capital that he would have received for his property would be down to zero. And he would either have to keep renting, and at that stage, the 25,000 rand would be in the region of 47,000 rand a month that he would have to pay additional every month that he wouldn't have to pay if he still owned the property, or he would have to buy the property again. And at that point, even if I just use normal inflation at 4.7 million rand roughly. And now, even if there's zero growth on property for the next 10 years, it would still mean that he would still have to fork out an additional 2.75 to 3 million rand. So, it really doesn't matter if you're very pessimistic about South Africa or optimistic. Even if you're the biggest pessimist, the numbers just doesn't work. So we don't think that is good advice.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing, Andrew. Yes, I think majority of the points and the statements that he made was the fact that he suggested that one should distance your assets because of the challenges that we are currently facing within South Africa. But it's actually great to hear, there are certain ways of approaching, and we can get great perspectives on different viewpoints. And I
Yeah.
look forward to chatting to you in the next series, where we will delve a bit deeper into some of the other thought-provoking statements that he has made, in order to get your perspectives and viewpoints on that specifically as well. Now,
Yeah, thanks, Marlene. I look forward to it.
me too. And for those of you in the meantime who would like to get connected with Andrew or find out more, you're more than welcome to follow him on LinkedIn or visit the Woodland Wealth website. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Marlene.